Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 players that you will regret drafting in 2024 fantasy football. But before we get into 5 players that I'm avoiding right now in fantasy football drafts, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into 5 players that you will regret drafting in 2024 fantasy football. We begin with the first player that you'll regret drafting in 2024 fantasy football, and that is Chris Olave, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. Current underdog ADP, wide receiver 12 at pick 18.2. Now, my problem with Chris Olave has nothing to do with the skill set of Chris Olave. It has to do with the fact that he is coming off the board as the wide receiver number 12 on an offense led by Derek Carr. If we all watched Derek Carr last season and we saw just how bad he was. Derek Carr was not very good at all last season. He looked worse than he ever looked in Oakland or in Viva Las Vegas. Derek Carr did not look good at all. Derek Carr is now 1 year older, and I don't magically think that Derek Carr entering into 2024 is going to be significantly better. Now, could he be a little bit better than last season? Definitely, but I don't expect him to come out there looking amazing, looking like the Derek Carr that honestly might have won MVP that year, where he got really hurt right early on in the season. The guy was on fire, and then he had that terrible injury, but he was great then. Not so great last year, and again, I don't magically prophesize that he is going to be amazing this season. My problem with Chris Olave is that you have to draft him as the wide receiver 12 in an offense that is led by Derek Carr, on an offense with Alvin Kamara, who is going to see a gazillion checkdowns, an offense with Taysom Hill, who you know is just going to get an annoying amount of touches. And they still have a guy like Rashid Shaheed. I know Rashid Shaheed is nowhere near the level of Chris Olave, but with the fact that Derek Carr is no bueno, with the fact that I think that Olave is really overpriced as the wide receiver 12, it is just a clear stay away situation for me. And it's not like if we were to see Derek Carr go down, knock on wood, or if they pulled the plug on Derek Carr, that famous Jameis Winston comes and plays. No, famous Jameis Winston is the backup for Deshaun Watson. Famous Jameis Winston is gone. The backup is Walmart Patrick Mahomes, Spencer Rattler. So I am really worried about Olave. This guy was the wide receiver 16 in PPR last season, 20 in points per game, 16 games played last season, 138 targets, 8.6 per game, number 12, 87 receptions, 5.4 per game, number 14. 1,123 receiving yards, 70.2 per game, number 17, and 5 total touchdowns, 29th. Efficiency-wise, he was not very efficient at all. 46th in yards per target, 49th in yards per reception, 72nd in target accuracy, and 75th in contested catch rate. Again, I am not here to dig the metaphorical grave of Chris Olave. I think in different situations, I would be ecstatic to draft Chris Olave as the wide receiver 12, but in this situation in New Orleans, I don't want anything to do with Chris Olave as the wide receiver 12. At number 2, we got Deebo Samuel, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, underdog ADP, wide receiver 14 at pick 22.2. Wide receiver 15 in PPR last season, and wide receiver 13 in PPR points per game. Deebo Samuel is another case where I think the guy is incredibly talented, but I don't love the situation. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Nick, how don't you like the situation in San Francisco? Right? That's a great team, Kyle Shanahan. Sure, they are a great team, but they have Christian McCaffrey. They have Brandon Ayuk. They have George Kittle, and that leads to inconsistency in Deebo Samuel game in and game out. And there were some reports that maybe Deebo was going to get traded, or maybe Ayuk was going to get traded. But right now, in the middle of May, it really seems like both Deebo and Brandon Ayuk are going to be 49ers this season. And the biggest kicker towards what really hurts Deebo Samuel, I think, is Christian McCaffrey. When Christian McCaffrey wasn't there, we were seeing a whole lot more involvement in the running game, some potential extra running touchdowns that have been siphoned away from Deebo Samuel via Christian McCaffrey. Again, this is not meant to be a hit piece on Deebo Samuel. I'm not saying that Deebo Samuel sucks more cock than Mia Malkova at playing football or something. But all I'm saying is that in this situation, to me, I would rather just turn the other cheek, turn the other way, and draft a different player as the wide receiver 14 or at pick 22.2. 15 games played last season, 89 targets, 44th. Not very good. Again, Deebo Samuel doesn't necessarily need a gazillion targets to be great because of the rushing upside, but with McCaffrey there, the rushing upside is kind of flattened. He's 39th in receptions with 60. 892 receiving yards, 59.5 per game, number 33. Now, he had 12 total touchdowns, 4th, right? The touchdowns is the savior of Deebo Samuel's game. But what happens if Deebo Samuel goes out there this season and instead of 12, he gets 8, right? Instead of 12, maybe everything goes wrong and he gets 5, right? And then you're looking at a complete and utter bust at pick 22. Again, this is not meant to be super negative towards Deebo Samuel. In a better situation, I like Deebo. And again, the 49ers are a great team. I love Brock Purdy, right? A lot of people like to shit on him. I like Brock Purdy. But I think with McCaffrey there, with the rushing upside being lessened, I just don't want to draft Deebo in the second round. 37 rushes, first for 225 yards, first at receiver. I don't know how anyone would think that another receiver would beat that. So that shouldn't really be shocking at all. Efficiency, 8th in target separation, 10th in yards per target, 7th in true catch rate, 27th in yards per reception. Again, this guy is really good. But he's on a loaded offense with a receiver at Ayuk who I think is a better receiver than him. And again, to go back to my point about inconsistency, it's clear when you look at the fantasy points metric in every single game. Week 1, he's the wide receiver 36. Then he's the wide receiver 12. Then the wide receiver 8. Then the wide receiver 124. And that's not a game where he was hurt, right? He played 88.7% of the snaps against the Cardinals, 0.6 fantasy points. Then 27th at wide receiver, 100th. That's a game he got hurt, so I won't blame him too much there. Fast forward, 17th, 39th, 9th, 2nd, 1st, 11th, 45th, 13th, 64th. Again, not every player in fantasy football has to be this double condom wrap on your team, this super safe player. They don't have to be. But when I'm investing a top 24 fucking pick on a guy, I like him to be a little bit more consistent. At number 3, the third player you'll regret drafting, we got DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. Underdog ADP, wide receiver 22 at pick 32.7. I was completely off of DK Metcalf last year. I thought his draft price was too damn high, and I was right. Wide receiver 21 in PPR last year, 23 in PPR points per game. This was a year where at the beginning of the season, this team had no idea how to use Jackson Smith-Njigba. Jackson Smith-Njigba was basically invisible. He had that fucking invisibility cloak from Harry Potter on. And then, towards the end of the season, we start seeing a lot more JSN. And I think that JSN's going to be a lot more involved this year, and I think that's going to be a real kick to the gonads of DK Metcalf. And Tyler Lockett, while he's ancient, right? While he was riding dinosaurs back in the day, he's still on the team. And their quarterback isn't getting better. It's Geno Smith. It's Geno Smith. I know Geno regressed from 2022 and 2023. He wasn't as good in 2023. But that might have been a Fugazi season in 2022 out of Geno Smith. 16 games played, 16 starts. He was 22nd in targets with 120, 7.5 per game. 66 receptions, 4.1 per game, 34th. 1,114 receiving yards, 69.6 per game, 18th. 8 total touchdowns, 11th. In terms of target accuracy, 62nd. In terms of dominator rating, 13th. 26th in yards per target, 6th in yards per reception. Just like with Deebo, just like with Chris Olave, I am not trying to tell you guys that DK Metcalf is a certified bum. right? I'm not going to tell you that DK Metcalf is atrocious, but what I'm going to tell you is in a Geno Smith offense that still has Tyler Lockett, who, again, I get he's getting older, still solid. They got JSN, this great receiver that I know didn't have the best rookie year, but again, he started picking things up. He started stacking things up like a Jenga tower at the end of last season. So I think Metcalf is kind of just going to finish in this range of wide receiver 24 through 26. Again, is he going to be the worst pick ever? Probably not. But I don't really want to be drafting DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 22 when I don't see him finishing above the wide receiver 22 with Geno Smith, with JSN, with Tyler Lockett, with Kenneth Walker, with Zach Charbonnet. This is, in terms of talent besides Geno, a pretty loaded offense. So DK Metcalf, to me, just does not feel like a great pick. Again, is he going to have those big games? Of course, right? The guy's lightning speed, and he's built like a Greek god. He's built like a fucking Ford F-150, okay? He's built like Optimus Prime. He's huge, and he's fast, right? He's the prototypical receiver you build in a lab, okay? But in Seattle, at wide receiver 22, I think you're going to regret making that pick. But you know what you won't regret? Hitting that subscribe button down below if you're new. Whether you are new to the channel or not, hit that like button and let me know what you guys think about all of these players. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Let me know in the comment section. At number 4, we got Christian Kirk, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Underdog ADP, wide receiver 31 at pick 54.3. Wide receiver 46 in PPR last season, but he got hurt, right? He only played in 12 games. Wide receiver 33 in PPR points per game, tied with Garrett Wilson and Kendrick Bourne. 85 targets, 7.1 per game, 47th. 57 receptions, 4.8 per game, number 45. 787 receptions, 65.6 per game, number 36. And 3 total touchdowns, 58th. Christian Kirk played second fiddle behind Calvin Ridley last season. Christian Kirk, more than likely, in my opinion, won't be the number 1 receiver in targets in this offense. They bring in Gabe Davis, who doesn't really move the pendulum too much, right? Doesn't really swing the pendulum away from Christian Kirk. But I think when you draft Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round, that does kind of move the needle enough for me. This is a team that already has a running back that could see 70, 80 targets this season in Travis Etienne. This is a team with a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who never really lived up to his expectations. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is bad, but the way I would describe Trevor Lawrence and the way that I told my friends earlier today when we were talking about football, I said, Trevor Lawrence is not a bust, right? But he was this guy that basically everyone was given the slurp up and down. They were slobbing on his knob like corn on the cob coming into the NFL draft, generational prospect, and I did the exact same thing, right? But in the NFL, he's not a bust. He's not awful, but he just hasn't lived up to those expectations. And it's been so many years in the NFL now to where I feel like saying that isn't all that crazy, right? It's not like Bryce Young's rookie year, right? Where people are just out on him already for some reason, right? That doesn't make very much sense. So again, I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is Derek Carr. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is Daniel Jones. Okay? That's Skylar Thompson. But not as amazing as we thought he would be. Christian Kirk is in a situation also with Evan Ingram. This feels like every week the number 1 receiver is going to be a little bit different. And I still deep down have some hopes that maybe Gabe Davis is good enough to the fact where maybe Christian Kirk ends up 3rd in targets on this team. Maybe, 3rd. I mean, saying 4th would be crazy, right? Saying that ETN gets more targets than him, but it is possible. So Christian Kirk is just a guy that I'm kind of out on. 27th in yards per target, 37th in yards per reception, 47th in route win rates. Again, not a certified bum by any means, but at wide receiver 31, I'm just hunting for situations with a little more upside than I see in this Jaguars offense. And again, this was another team that, well, this is the only team we talked about in today's video that was just on fire at the beginning of the season and then completely fell apart, right? Everything went wrong for this team. Hope they're a little bit better this season. They are somewhat fun to watch, but Christian Kirk is just, that's going to be a no for me, dog, for Christian Kirk. At number 5, we got Javonte Williams. Now, Javonte Williams is my strongest stand in this video. right? I could see how you could talk yourself into Chris Olave. I could see how you could talk yourself into Deebo Samuel. I could see how you could talk yourself into DK Metcalf. I don't really see how you could talk yourself into Christian Kirk, into really loving him, giving him the gawk gawk 9,000 special. But if you talk yourself into Javonte Williams, you are a certified crazy person. Sean Payton came out recently. This wasn't 3 months ago. This was in the last week, and talked about a running back competition with the other backs. And Javonte Williams, I know everyone loved him coming into the NFL draft, but he hasn't been so great to the point where his job is secure, right? There's a chance that Audric Estime, who just got drafted, kicks the door down like a saloon-style Red Dead Redemption John Marston, right? Kicks him with the 300 kick down a hole, right? That's possible. Am I saying it's going to be him guaranteed? No. But Sean Payton was just talking up Blake Watson. He's talked up Jaleel McLaughlin. He's talked up these other guys. So I don't think it's a guarantee. Like, the reason why a couple weeks ago I did a video, I drafted Javonte Williams in a mock draft. I said, you know what? Javonte should be the guy. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I get in the lab and really research things further, seems like Sean Payton isn't set in the ways of Javonte Williams, running back 31 off the board, pick 104. Javonte came into last year hurt. He came off of an injury. So you know what? I'm not here to tell you that Javonte Williams is terrible. But again, he just has not lived up to the expectations that a lot of us had entering into the NFL. Running back 29 last year, 33 in PPR points per game. He ranked 17th in carries, 28th in rushing yards, 17th in targets, 16th in receptions, 26th in receiving yards, and 30th in touchdowns. 59th in true yards per carry, 53rd in yards per touch. The running back room is Javonte, Samaje Perine, who I think might be gone. Bye-bye. They might get rid of him. They drafted Audric Estime. They got Jaleel McLaughlin from last season, and they drafted Blake Watson. Again, am I going to guarantee in May that Javonte Williams is losing his job? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not even guaranteeing you that I know for sure that he's going to lose his job. But I think there's a chance when Sean Payton's already talking about it. I also think there's a chance that Javonte isn't really a workhorse. And even if, hey, Javonte's the guy, you know, maybe Jaleel, who showed some gas last year, playing second fiddle, right? So Javonte, to me, right now, is a clear stay away. He is the clearest out of this group for me. Again, I'm doing a lot of underdog drafts. Code link in the video description. Chris Olave. Haven't really drafted him. Haven't really drafted Deebo. I have never even considered taking DK Metcalf. Christian Kirk I haven't really taken. Javonte Williams is the easiest fade in my opinion right now. We have no idea if he's even going to be the starting running back in week 1. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like on today's video as well. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.